Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Dr. Kelly Donahue,
And I'm Dr. Robin Pashby.
and we're back today to have another conversation. Robin and I talk several times a week. Actually, that's probably much more than that if we
Yeah.
talk about texting too. And, so much of what we talk about it feels helpful to us. For our own selves, and it's a lot of what we do is it's processing a little bit of what's coming up with our clients in a general way, but also just kind of taking in everything that we're getting from the environment. And so we thought we'd pick up where we left off yesterday. Yesterday, we were talking about this transition from anxiety to depression during this time, and the idea of just the accumulating effects of this. Now that we've sort of reached a point where there's no going back. We may have thought that in the beginning, in the first week or two, like we'll
Yeah.
just get through this period and things will go back to normal. That's not happening, and things are starting to kind of stack upon themselves, and we're starting to see the true impacts of this.
Yes. Yes. I have this image in my head of like a staircase or a bookshelf or something where you just sort of keep piling things, like, oh, this stuff all needs to go upstairs. So I'm just going to set it here on the steps. Or
Have
everybody
you
has
been in
like,
my house lately?
yeah, right. And so, and like suddenly you look over and there's this huge pile there and it looks really overwhelming to deal with. And that feels to me like what I'm seeing in clients these days, and in my own life too, right? I mean, just the accumulation of loss and the accumulation of uncertainty, I think, over time is just getting really heavy for people to carry.
Yeah. And I think it's getting real because there are more and more like real life big things
Yeah,
that we're missing.
yeah,
I have had clients who are graduating from grad school and law school who are going to be doing it online. And, they're like, I don't even know what that looks like. Like, what
right,
does that mean? And there's no redo on that.
right,
That's their experience of it.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and trying to figure out how do we cope with that, right? I mean, how do we help our clients cope with the intensity of these losses over time? And I've been doing a lot more discussion of just really acknowledging that this is grieving and really acknowledging this stacking. Um, and and I think what I found is some people are resistant to do that because they, like, oh, well, okay, yeah, so I don't get to do that, but I have a roof over my head, or, oh, but I haven't lost my job. And this whole thing of like comparative suffering, like I can't be sad because I don't have it as bad as other people in this world. And so,
Totally.
yeah, so I'm trying to really process that too, and allow everyone to own that. I think Brene Brown says that feelings like this, like compassion, whether it's self-compassion or compassion for others, isn't a pie. So if you take a slice, it doesn't mean there's less for others. And I love that way of thinking about it.
Totally. Yeah. It's like that whole idea that if there are starving children in part of the world, you not eating lunch doesn't help them.
Right.
It
Exactly.
and I get it. I get where people are coming from and the compassion that everyone has
Mm,
for other people who are going through things. But I think that everyone is struggling
right.
in their own way. And it's like a different, I was talking about it like ice cream flavors. Like it's just a different flavor of ice cream that it's our struggle. It doesn't mean one is bigger than another necessarily
Right.
because they're all different. And we
That's
need
right.
to feel them too, like you were talking about with the grief. I think that if we just try to like bypass it, I'm all for positive psychology, but I
Yeah.
think we need to feel what we're feeling and acknowledge it because it's there. And if we don't acknowledge it, then it just goes to some deep dark place and comes up when we don't want it to.
That's right. And there's such risk right now for people to turn to other ways of coping with feelings that we don't really want to hold and process, right?
Mhm.
So I've seen a lot of increase in alcohol use. And, what can be passed off as like, oh, I'm just having a casual glass of wine or I'm having a quarantini party with my friends suddenly becomes a pattern of life. And when you don't have to necessarily wake up in the morning as early or other
Yeah,
things, it's really easy to sort of fall into that, right? Or a lot of comfort eating. And look, I mean, I get it. Like, I think we're all doing that to some extent,
totally.
but we do have to sort of pay attention to what are the ways that I'm managing this feeling when I don't want to sort of be with the feeling.
Hmm.
And so I think maybe if people listening and our clients can actually just hold space for having the intensity and giving themselves a little bit of grace when, you know, you're more tired than usual, or just sad, that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and I think part of it is just having the awareness that this stuff is happening.
Yeah.
Like if you're drinking a little more, eating a little more, like just kind of being aware of that.
Mhm.
And two, knowing what we know about habits, which is that habits get encoded when there's strong emotion,
Right,
especially strong negative emotion,
right,
right? And so if we're feeling all the strong negative emotion and we start going through Ben and Jerry's every night, that habit's going to become encoded much more quickly
right,
than it would have if we didn't have that negative emotion.
right. And the good news about that is that the same could be true about healthy coping habits.
Totally.
Right? So we have a lot of intensity right now, and there's some people that are really reacting to that with really long walks, or with lots of meditation, or with a daily hot bath, or whatever it is,
Yep.
and a lot more connection, even virtually, with friends. So
Yep.
maybe those habits are other things that can get really rooted right now, and maybe we'll continue to make space for those as we launch back into whatever is coming next.
Yeah. And I think taking the time to give those feelings weight,
Yeah,
because the negative feelings get weight, like it just happens and
right.
they take up the space,
Yeah.
but to make it intentional, to make space for those good things, really feeling how great it feels to be in that bath when you're in that bath, or
Yes.
really listening to the birds and noticing that your children are not with you when you're on your walk and it's
Yes.
all
Oh,
of those
gosh,
things
yes.
can be really helpful.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll keep talking more tomorrow.
Sounds